Okay, and we're recording. All right. Welcome everybody to the David Araki podcast. Um, hey man, why don't you tell us about yourself or introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey there, David. My name is Dawaune Hayes. I am a lot of things, but first and foremost, we went to school together here in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, it's been
And
actually a little while since I've been in Omaha. It's been 2016. I actually came back to visit last fall, but I only spent about a week.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there, but yeah.
No worries at all. Yeah, so I mean that's how we know each other. But I'm born and raised here in Omaha, and I'm a working journalist, and artist and performer, and now I'm running for mayor of Omaha in the city.
All right. Wow, it sounds like you've been into like a lot of things since we've last talked. Especially this mayor thing. Like that's huge, man. Um, yeah, what motivates somebody into wanting to become like a mayor or wanting to run for mayor?
That is a great question, and I'm asking myself that every single day. So I mentioned earlier that I'm a journalist. So in school, I studied journalism and public relations. And graduating in 2016, I had lived in Omaha my whole life. I'd never been really out of the city, maybe like a few small trips. And so after school, I immediately went on the road for 3 months with a good friend of mine, and we just went west and traveled to different cities and communities. And throughout that period, we were blogging about our experience, but also reading a lot of local news, and seeing what is happening there. Trying to learn as much as we could, mostly because we'd be in some places for maybe a couple of days, other times we'd be there for about a week, and we wanted to try to know as much about that place as possible. And in that period, I started really like comparing everything I knew to Omaha, because that's all I ever knew. And I was like, well, Omaha, it's like this, and Omaha, it's like this, and Omaha could be like that. And I just had so many ideas about how Omaha could change and be better, and be more accessible and all these types of things, that by the time we were done, we were coming out of the desert. We were like, let's head home. Well, one, we were broke and unemployed, but then also it just felt like all the places we visited weren't home. They were great places to visit. They were great places to be with friends, but they weren't where we were going to like be. And coming back to Omaha, I started working in community communications at a local arts nonprofit, and then from there started Noise, which is a local journalism organization. And all in that process, writing, documenting, reflecting, thinking about the city, the people, the stories, the resources, all those types of things. I kept it kept me coming back to city council, mayor's office, who's making decisions about these things, or who isn't making a decision, or who isn't paying attention to how these actions are impacting our community. Because I would talk to people, and they're like, I don't have food. I have a roof over my head that has a hole in it. I'm trying to get to work. I have these basic needs I'm trying to meet. And there are people in City Hall who are supposed to be doing something about that, or helping people connect to resources and that kind of stuff. And that isn't happening. But yet we're getting like multi-million dollar, billion-dollar construction projects. I'm just like, wait, people aren't fed, yet we're building new high-rise buildings that no one can afford. What's going on here? Um, and so it's literally the storytelling that
Hmm.
like the work in journalism and learning these stories, and then going to City Hall, being in the space and being like, these people aren't like more brilliant than we are. They aren't these like superheroes who are uniquely qualified to be mayor and city council. They just happened to be the people doing it. And there's some folks who are really great and who do a very strong job doing community advocacy and connecting the people with the city. But we have not seen, there has never been a person of color for mayor of Omaha. There's never been a queer person of color as a mayor of Omaha. Um, and we also, I would be the youngest in a very long time, if elected. And I think that's really important right now. Um, we recognize that we're the generation that has to clean up the messes, and the ones behind us are the ones that we have to like set the stage for, so that they can thrive into the future. But so far, so much has been like status quo. That's always how we've always done it, et cetera, et cetera. And I frankly can't wait any longer for someone to start to care about me and the planet, you know. And so that's why I'm running.
Oh, I mean, honestly, like I love that, you're very passionate about wanting to make a difference in like your life as well as the lives of like everybody else. I guess like I wanted to like take a step back. I wanted to ask you, how much different is Omaha since the last time I've been there really or lived there in 2016? Because
Oh my gosh.
honestly, like I don't know. I might be moving back, in the near future. Like
Hey,
Omaha is a second home to me, so
for
yeah.
sure, that's a great question. Omaha has changed a lot. In the last 4 years, whoa. And I think also what's changed is I've changed, and my perspective of Omaha has changed, and my involvement has changed. You know, prior to graduating, um, I'd always just been a student. You know,
Hmm.
I was in high school. You know, I lived with my parents. You know, I was in college, student. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time like getting involved with community matters. I was much more worried about just like getting my degree, figuring out what my next move is going to be. You know, all the way up until graduating high school, I was like, I'm trying to leave Omaha. I'm not about to be here. You're not going to see me going to school here. I'm going to Western, I'm going to Tufts, I'm going to Carleton. I got in those schools, couldn't afford those schools.
Hmm.
Creighton provided a really great scholarship that allowed me to go. And so I was like, well, I guess I got to find a new appreciation for my home. Because like, I'm not going anywhere for another 4 years. And
Hmm.
honestly, through introducing Omaha to folks like you and the people on campus who like aren't from Omaha and really like being the native to show people around really did help me build a deeper appreciation for the city. And since then, getting involved in like community and especially like arts nonprofit work and like creative movements and stuff, we've really seen a massive influx of people who lived here like 10 years ago, what they call boomerangs, and folks who are
Hmm.
moving back. We've seen a lot of like Jeet Mall is currently dirt right now, and they're doing an entire renovation of that. And we, you know, and then this last summer we saw so much with George Floyd and James Scurlock, and then recently a police officer killed another black man, Kenneth Jones, and just how people are sick of Omaha and
Hmm.
its old form because for a long time we just kind of like did got along to get along. You just do it barely enough. You know, no one's really going to city council meetings. You just kind of keep pushing, kicking the can down the road and see how far it gets. But now people are like, no, no, sir. We've got to do something else, and we've got to come with a vision. We have to come with like a real purpose. Um, you know, we do have a master plan, but what's our purpose statement? You know, in school we learn on your resume you put your purpose statement, the thing that guides you, your the statement that synthesizes who you are and who you want to be or who you're trying to be in the world. I cannot tell you what Omaha's is, nor could most people here. And I think, like any good business, like any good resume, like anybody who wants to make a difference, you have to put your vision forward first. Um, and if that vision doesn't include the people of the city that make the city what it is, um, then that's where we continue to see the disparity. And so since you left, a lot has changed. There's new development, there's new people, there's new organizing, there's new movements, and there's momentum in Omaha in a way that there hasn't been in a generation at least.
Okay. Wow. Mayor-elect Hayes. Like
It
that has a nice ring to it. So,
does.
what is this vision that you've been talking about for this last like minute? That sounds very like interesting.
Yeah. So one of my strong suits is visionary, and visionary experimenter, and I also give myself the term synthesizer because I love bringing things that seem disparate together. And that's what journalism does: is that it implores you to look at all these different elements and do all this research and bring these things together, and then think like, oh, these are actually all connected. They've been connected the whole time, but no one's ever thought to find the relationships between them. So I see Omaha as the repair, restoration, remediation, and recreation capital of the Midwest. Um, that's a lot of words, but that's the point. I'm running what I'm calling a regenerative campaign. I'm focused on, I don't want to just be sustainable. I don't want to just like get by. I want to literally be making the world better. Because sustainable is like about like doing no harm or trying to do like less harm. I want to do no harm and good. And that is far from where the conventional side has been, which is just kind of like do whatever you want and get your money and go. And Omaha is really stuck in that conventional space. So we have leaps and bounds to make before we get to regenerative. But I start with repair because fix things. Like society used to fix things. When something broke, you fixed it. When your clippers broke, you fixed it. When your car broke down, you fixed it. You know, like when your television didn't work, you took it to a repair person who was an engineer, who broke down took your TV apart and put it back together and fixed it. Now, because of capitalism, because of, you know, like the cheap cost of labor, cheap quote unquote cost of labor, you know, people just, oh, TV broke, just buy another one. Car broke down, just buy another one. Phone breaks, just buy another one. And that mentality, one, produces like crazy amounts of waste that we have no idea what to do with. And then two, it's just like when you have that kind of transactional behavior with objects, that's how you end up treating people. And so that's how we regard people who are incarcerated. That's how we regard people who are houseless. That's how we regard people who are low income. That's how we regard people who don't speak English. Like, because we have these transactional behaviors with the objects in the world around us, we're so much more likely to treat other people that way. So if you spend time to repair and learn the ins and outs and find the thing that was broken, the little piece that that fell apart that needs to be replaced, suddenly the thing that you're working on is so much more valuable because actually all it needed was a little tape. All it needed was a little glue. And I feel like that kind of mentality with repairing objects could help us with repairing our relationships and how we regard one another. Then I went to remediation.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, a question I have is, at what point do you say, oh, you know, maybe we do need to like completely overhaul this thing and try something completely new rather than just trying to like fix something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I see repair as a way of overhauling. And it's not necessarily because the system itself has to be dismantled and rearranged and sometimes even thrown away altogether. But like the objects and the material things in our world aren't going away anytime soon. So, you know, it would be nice to just like drop it all in a big volcano and like start over. But we can't. And so, you know, I think repair really puts the things that we wanted to ignore in our face. And I like that is a huge difference between what we've been doing now, which has been like ignoring the past, ignoring our impact on the world, keep putting things in landfill because that's where things have always gone, without stopping to ever think, where did this come from? Where's it going? How can we make better, etc. So yeah, thank you for that question. I really appreciate that. Because yeah, there are lots of things that we do have to get rid of, but I think what's important is that we understand where we came from. And in order to effectively move forward, because we could say like, scrap it, it's all crap. And then like literally end up building the same thing because we didn't spend time understanding how it worked before, how it was formed, and then how it evolved and devolved. Because that's how we're going to make our movement from there. We can't, going back to ground zero is much more difficult, and it's not necessarily where we want to go. I don't know. I think there's a balance there of like, you know, people give you advice and you can choose to do with that advice as you will. You can use that advice, incorporate it in your life, or you can throw it away, and or discard it or reform it and put it into something else. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay. I guess I wanted to add a little something there too. like in sciences, they say that like all great like discoveries or like breakthroughs are built on like the shoulders and the backs of like those scientists that came before you. And it seems like in your case, like you in a sense have that same perspective. Like it seems like you really want to, you know, work with what's currently in place as much as possible, and like trying to remedy everything for what's best for the people of Omaha. And I really respect that about you.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
and I love that point because it's true. Like I didn't get here by myself. I will never claim
Hmm.
to be self-made. It physically takes two people to make me. so, like I think that's also really important. Is people like I'm self-made. I'm like, I don't think you are like what the bacteria, a protozoa that can like self-replicate. We're not. That's not how we
Hmm.
work. And then the things that we know, the clothing that we have, the food that we eat, the cars that we drive, the places we interact with, all required people to make something to put those parts together. If we were entirely self-made, by the time you went to like go get drinks with a friend, you'd be growing the potatoes to make the vodka. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you'd be starting the seeds to grow the potatoes to make. So like, we can't. So to say that we're entirely self-made is, I think, is as farcical. I understand people wanting to say like, I'm a strong individual who has a sense of self and personal self-determination. I wholeheartedly believe in that because a strong individual makes for a strong community, but vice versa. And they aren't mutually exclusive. Um, and I think it's important to work with the people. We live in Omaha is about just under 500,000 people. Our metropolitan area is just over a million, with Council Bluffs and our surrounding suburbs and stuff. And we're the largest city in Nebraska. We're home to some of the richest people in the world.
Hmm.
Um, Union Pacific is here. Off the Air Force bases here. I-80 goes through here. The Missouri River comes through here. We're literally like the heart with all these multiple arteries and main ways to transport things. Why aren't we acting like we have a heart?
Hmm.
Why aren't we treating people with heart? And why aren't the people involved, every single person here, feel like they are able to contribute to what is Omaha? Right now, it's very much like these people at City Hall are Omaha. Everybody else is just a taxpayer. I will never call people taxpayers. Yes, you do pay taxes, but you're a person.
Hmm.
And even if you don't pay taxes, you live here, you're still a citizen. No matter, regardless of your citizenship or any type of documentation, you live in the city, therefore you contribute to it. Period. Um, Therefore, you should be able to find ways to make a difference in your community, in your city, to improve it, and to be seen as valuable. And right now, too many people have to fight to even be seen as valuable, to even be seen as significant enough to care about. And um, that that puts us in a really grave position, because we have a lot of work to do that requires as many hands as possible. And if we're not willing to build a strong foundation and a community network that's willing to like work together to make those things possible, then we're not going to see the changes we need.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry for like cutting you off there. What was that second R again?
A second art, remediation.
Yeah.
Basically, things is a mess right now. There's too much trash. There's dirt everywhere. There's oil everywhere. There's houses. People are eating the worst food ever. We're literally in the worst state of affairs right now, and it's only getting worse. So remediation is just the act of cleaning it up and figuring
Hmm.
out what to do with it. How to convert those raw materials, those poison, toxic materials, and turn them into something that can be a benefit. Nature doesn't have waste. Why do we? Like, everything that dies goes back to the earth, but here we're all like, oh, more plastic, put it in the ground. And so that would require like us mining our landfill. There's actually entire industries right now being built on landfill mining to incinerate some parts as well as sort other parts. And like, you know, so many people would hate this, but like, imagine going to landfill and working, your job is to take things out of landfill. And that sounds like, ew, gross, why would I do that? But like, the fact that you're not willing to confront your own waste is is indicative of our behavior and our relationships to ourselves and each other. It's like, you know, people are like, ew, you look at your own poop, and you're like, yeah, because like this thing came out of me, and it shows what my status, my health is. Like when you go to a doctor, they take waste samples so they can understand what is in your system. How did they get there? What's your composition? So let's go to our landfill and take samples and say like, what is in here? How do we prevent this from getting ever getting in here? How do we take it out? How do we remove it? And then last one is recreation. Repair and remediation are going to be very difficult to do. Take a lot of time, very tedious, messy, grueling, not fun. Though we have technology, we have lots of people, and there's going to be some really awesome creative ways to respond. We're ultimately going to need recreation. We're going to need to hang out. We're going to want music and food and dancing and those types of cultural things that give us an opportunity to celebrate the world that we are trying to repair and remediate. And so that's fundamental. And most cities are built on recreation. Most tourism industries are built off of like food and theater and stuff like that. Omaha already has a really strong performing arts community, visual and creative community. So invest in them. Encourage everyone to become an artist, in whatever form that looks. And then what you start to get is this very like village, artisanal based economy where everyone's a specialist in something and everyone makes something that's beautiful, and then everyone has access to resources to things that are affordable because we were repairing them, we're reclaiming those materials. We didn't have to go buy them brand new. And so what you start to do is create your own local regenerative economy that literally is feeding itself off of the waste that we had generated over generations. And then there's a point where once you run out of that waste, you start creating new products that are biodegradable, that are compostable, that, work in harmony with the planet. And that's what I see our future being. I mean, that's the future of all industry. That's the future of all community. That's the future of the world, frankly, is like stop throwing things away, figure out what you're going to do with it, make it into something new, and then find a way to chill out so that you can appreciate the world that we live on. And so I don't foresee our future being 40-hour plus work weeks. I don't see our future being tied to the office and tied to just like making cheaper and cheaper things for the sake of profit margins for a handful of corporations. But we have to make those decisions now.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that, like, I actually really like your point about maybe like mining like landfills or whatnot for like reusable plastics, or like incinerating it for energy. I don't know if a lot of like viewers or listeners like know this, but in Hawaii, like, living on an island, of course, like, landfill and space or trash or whatnot is a problem. So actually, like a lot of our energy, like electricity, is generated through like the burning of our energy, and they burn it at such a high temperature that there isn't too many impurities released into the atmosphere, and that's kind of cool. And plastic, yeah, of course, like we as a society, I feel like use too much plastic, and I feel like what you want to do, make it more, I guess, appealing to recycle plastics and whatnot, like would definitely help everybody moving forward. I guess like moving on from like your plans for like the environment or whatnot, was there any other aspect in society that you really felt passionate about and wanted to make a difference in?
Yeah, I mean, I start with the environment because we are products of our environment, and like I mentioned earlier, like how we treat our environment is reflective of how we treat ourselves and each other. And so if we want to address things like racism, like incarceration, like violence, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and all the things that are in between, we really have to reconcile with how we've treated the land that we're on, and how we're going to work with other people to make it better. Something that really stood out to me in my senior year spirituality class was collective suffering breeds compassion. And I think that's true. When we start to recognize each other's struggle as a shared struggle, there's something so much more, like we develop heart for one another, and we start to see each other as equals or as someone who is an ally in the advancement and the betterment of our space. And so like I care a lot about transportation. I don't own a car. I've sold my car in school, and so like I haven't had one since 2014. And people were like, "You haven't had a car in Omaha since 2016 since then?" I was like, "Yeah, because I've been able to build my life in such a way. Well, when I'm able-bodied, so I can bike. That's not everyone's situation. I wholeheartedly recognize that. But I've also been able to like orient my living so that most of the things I do, most of the shops I go to, and places I spend time are within a bikeable distance. Um, we have a electric bike share station, so I just like walk over, check out the bike to Dundee or to the Midtown Crossing or downtown and drop the bike off, and I go do about my business. And so that kind of connectivity, I'm going to see that all over the city, because there's people who live all over the city who can't go to other parts of the community. Like for example, I live in Northeast Omaha, and if I want to go to 167th and Pacific, I'm not going to get there. There
Mhm.
isn't a like there's a bus that stops at OV Mall, which is like this dead mall surrounded by concrete, and there's nothing else there. If you want to go participate in the other form in the other societies and communities in Omaha, you have to have a vehicle, which means like that's a financial barrier, that's an environmental barrier, that's a cultural barrier. Some people just don't drive in their own cultures. Some people don't care to. Some people physically aren't able to. That should not stop you from being able to go to the Tri-Faith Initiative, where there is a mosque and a temple and a church all on the same property, like so that working together. Like I wish I could go just be involved in those spaces on my own volition without having to rely on somebody else to drive me or to have the money to be able to go there. And I think that lack of connection is why Omaha is as segregated as it is, socially, racially, economically. And um, by addressing connectivity and these different industries of repair, remediation, and recreation, and localizing them, I think we'll start to see are these like really strong nodes all over the city where people want to be connected and relate to one another. And yeah, I think there's just a huge opportunity to we can start to address a lot of our social ails by
Mhm.
addressing like how we interact with our environment and then how we traverse it.
Yeah, I especially like that you actually use public like transportation and like what's made and everything. Because like, when's the last time you heard like of any politician using the system of transportation that they're supposed to be like operating?
Yeah,
Yeah, and like
that's
even and over here in Hawaii, like I feel like a problem is that yeah, they kind of in a sense like ignore the problem, the educational system here, because they send all their kids to like private schools. Like I always felt that like that was a little off for like politicians to do that. But like I really enjoy that like you want to use the systems that like you want to put into place because you feel like it benefits everybody. And like
it,
it's very refreshing is what I'm trying to say.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And it really comes down to public infrastructure. I think public infrastructure is incredible, and so many of us have very similar needs. Um, and there's this kind of American mythology that like public transportation and certain like public things aren't um, are lower quality, or like for those people the only reason you use public anything is because you're poor, and you're like, yeah, I'm broke, but like it's actually I get public education here in Omaha is really solid, at least it was when I was growing up, and that's why I'm staying,
Mhm.
because I've been afforded opportunities in this city that many people don't have access to or wish they had access to. um, and I would be remiss to be like, "Oh yeah, thanks Omaha for all the privilege and support. Bye." You know what I mean? Like, and just go because
Yeah.
I thought about moving to San Francisco. I thought about moving to New York. I'm a black person with a journalism degree in communications. I could easily like go get a multi-figure job in some big city doing running this, that, and the other. But that's not where I feel I'm gonna have the most impact. That's not where my
Mhm.
heart lies. I want to see my home made better. um, and not wait for somebody else to do it. So that's, and then just seeing like the momentum across the country with the general elections and the movements around young people running for office and things like that just makes me excited to be like, cool, finally it's our turn to be like, guys, this is whack.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's like honestly like a controversial like opinion I have. Like, I may not necessarily agree with like everything, Trump has done, but like I do appreciate the fact that he has gotten the young people involved in politics. And I think, moving forward, like we're gonna have to, in a sense, like create the world that we want to like live in. So,
Very
and
much
it's like
so.
I think it starts with guys like you. So, like,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you bring him up because I'm an actor. I've been acting most of my life, and I know a good actor when I see one. And Trump is a fantastic actor. If you need someone, like here's someone who took on a massive role, and is probably now one of the most famous people in the entire world, infamous, I guess. But like his commitment to the role and it mobilized people. He, as an actor, mobilized change in ways because people had to respond, people had to defend, people had to profess what their beliefs are for the first time. People had to inform their perspectives because for a long time, like, oh no one like him could get in there, and then it happens, and we're like, oh wait, like that wasn't supposed to happen. If you're not involved, if you're not paying attention, if you're not engaged, if you're not, one of the people's in the halls making the decisions and passing the notes and making the phone calls, then this stuff can easily happen. See? And so I think that's also kind of where my agency comes from, is like right out of school in 2016, fresh, like 22. What am I gonna do? I have no idea. I just spent a lot of time talking about journalism and media, and then you see this election happen like a few months later. You're like, is this what my future is gonna be? Are you serious? Because I mean, like election night, I wept. Like I just cried, curled into a ball, didn't move for a day. But that kind of like defeat and low point and that feeling of like utter despair actually became a point of motivation for me, because I was like, I never want to be that low again. I never want to let somebody else's actions make me feel that low again. So I'm gonna do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that's like something, we all ought to do, right? Like, if there's something externally making us feel bad, what can we do to make, the situation better? And it's very good that, you found, your calling and you're trying to make, the real difference in your opinion. Yeah, I guess like a big thing right now everybody's talking about is like the pandemic. Obviously, we didn't really elect any of these officials with the intention of them leading us through a pandemic. What would you do differently?
Our health is our wealth.
That's a very common and popular saying.
Yes, but our health is our wealth. Like if we do not have our wealth, if we don't not have our health, we can't do anything else. And I say that, but kind of in a different context. Mostly because I think it's important that we own our health, that we are the sole proprietors of our healthcare. And that might be counterintuitive to, like Western medicine and traditional industry, healthcare industry would suggest that like, we're supposed to give our health to the experts that went to school for 10 years and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars researching and stuff. And think of all the advances that Western medicine has made. Yes, I recognize all those things. I have plenty of those books. I do a lot of that research. I spend a lot of time reading research documents on the latest studies. But the fact that we are waiting for somebody in a white coat somewhere to figure out how to take care of me, again, is one of those, why should I wait for somebody else to decide when I'm going to be healthy? Why should I wait for somebody else to decide when I'm going to eat? Why should I wait for somebody else to decide when I'm going to have a healthy, sustainable, beautiful home? That's not how it works. America is very contradictory in the way that we love the cowboy on the frontier mentality and the bootstrap stuff of like go and do your own. But then we literally build our governments and our industries and our regulatory systems to hinder the personal freedoms of people as quickly as possible and make sure that corporations have precedence. So it's like, what do you bootstraps or like making bootstraps in a factory? Like, what do you want me to do? And so with health, I start with food, growing our own food, localizing our food system. We live in an agriculture state, Nebraska. We live surrounded by Iowa and Kansas and South Dakota on the river, but yet most of our food doesn't come from this region. Why is that? We see farmers suffering, growing corn and soy and these mass industrial crops, destroying water, destroying their land, not making any money. And then you have people in the big cities who are hungry. And you're like, wait, hold on a second. There's people who have the tools, there's people who need the food, but we're not connecting those things. So you broker those relationships and you start to address and localize organic, local, nutritional, heirloom food that diversifies your ecosystem and diversifies people's diets and ultimately start to address health, because food is the first medicine. And if we know where our food is coming from, we're much more likely to trust it. And then we're also likely to understand how it affects us. Whereas right now, we see our food is wrapped in plastic at Walmart. I don't know where this head of lettuce came from. I can't tell you. I don't know when it was picked. I don't know who grew it. I don't know who touched it. I don't know how many surfaces it's been on. I don't know where the seed originally came from. I couldn't tell you any of those things. It said product of Mexico. I'm like, I've never been to Mexico, so I don't even know where. So you localize your food system, and then that really brings the term food sovereignty is something I'm really passionate about, because food sovereignty is that independence to know where your food is coming from and how it's going to nourish your body. And then with medicine, looking into herbalism and traditional forms of medicine, where prior to the rise of Western medicine, these were practices that were widely used across the world. And then as we started to standardize our conventional healthcare system, we started calling plant-based medicines crockery. We started calling it like, oh, there's not enough research, because we're not doing the research. Like you'll find that if you go to WebMD and you look up an herb or something, they'll tell you about all these things that it can benefit. And then at the end, it usually says there's not enough research for this. But there's plenty of research for the next vaccine. Like, there's plenty of research for ibuprofen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how am I'm not supposed to trust nettles, but I'm supposed to trust this thing you went in after centuries of you indicating you don't care about me. Now suddenly I'm supposed to have trust. And yes, I follow the FDA and I've been following these stories, and I follow UNMC here, and my friends are doctors and scientists and things, but like to not have a heavy dose of skepticism in this day and age about anything is really difficult. As a journalist, my first thing is to be skeptical, because I'm like, historically, and even up to this point, like you're trying to give me $600, after we've been in a pandemic. How am I supposed to feel that you care about me and trust you enough to give me some drug that you haven't even taken yourself? But then if I'm saying, hey, like, what if we just make some Mullen tinctures and work through breathing exercises and start addressing the roots of our stress that apply the stress to our bodies, that make our bodies more susceptible to things like COVID and other viruses. Like, I believe there's a place where these forms of medicine cohabitate and they live together, and that people can grow their own food, produce their own herbs, and to have a sense of like how to take care of themselves, and then work with doctors and our traditional healthcare system, if you will, to learn from these things. Because I believe that we have technology that can help us understand the efficacy of nettles. So why aren't we merging these things together? And the answer is profit. It's economics. It's not profitable for people to grow their own medicine. It's not profitable for people to know how to take care of themselves. How else are you supposed to get their insurance? How else are you supposed to get, you know, them on a pill that they're going to take the rest of their life? And I think we have to be willing to be critical in a public forum, in government, in front of people, saying, hey, there's a lot of things we're not doing well. And there are some things we are doing really well. So let's take away the other stuff that doesn't work and then reintroduce these things that have been with us for thousands of years that we seem to have like lost connection to, bring them together to find a creative solution moving forward. Because if we're expecting the traditional Western healthcare system to fix all of our problems for us, that's not what it's designed to do. It was designed to address symptoms, whereas the earth produces herbs, food, medicine, practices that can help us take control of our physical bodies. And if we merge those things together, the study and the ability of reductionism into focus and these practices have been with us for thousands of years, I think we can find like the sweet spot in between that brings agency and a sense of security for the individual, as well as building the new future of actual healthcare.
Okay. I have to ask, like, is this your first time running for office? Like, you're very good at answering these questions.
This is my first time running for office. But honestly, like, I get these skills from my journalism and from my public speaking and theater background. And I read books, I read sci-fi, I love anime. I spend a lot of time just like being a total nerd and being like, how do you bring it together? How do you do? There's got to be a solution.
I have to ask, which anime are you watching now? Or
okay, I just finished the Japanese version of X-Men. There was like one particular anime version on Netflix that was on, and I love X-Men. It's one of my favorite Marvel series. And I had yet to find a series that was like gritty and dark, and that really took those things into consideration. And so this anime version of X-Men came out in 2001. And so I just finished. There's only one season, so I finished that season last night. But I'm watching Banana Fish on Amazon Prime. That's a really good. It's a great show. It takes place in like the 80s and 80s New York, and just like the soundtrack, the animation, the fighting, that's the kind of, I don't know, we need that kind of playfulness. We need people who watch anime. We need people in office who watch we need people in office who watch anime. Like, can we
yeah, so you heard it here first, folks. Like, if you're a weeb and you love anime, run for office.
Honestly, because it keeps your sense of wonder. It keeps your sense of imagination. It keeps you exercising that muscle of mystery and creativity and problem solving, and these like magical explanations for why something happens, and then like, or sometimes these stories that are so in depth that you're like, whoa. I mean, I finished Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because I watched the original Full Metal, and then I watched Brotherhood in its entirety this year. And just to be like, whoa, here is a series with so many layers. Like, think about the research done by the teams. Think about all the effort put into this show to make it as immersive as it is. That is the kind of cooperation that we need at a city government level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's a very good inspiration, saying that like, oh, I'm really inspired by, anime and how the production team is able to produce like a good product through communication. Like, that's a very powerful message in itself. What's your favorite anime?
Oh, I knew this was coming. This is hard. This is really hard. Okay. I mean, to be honest, the original Full Metal was the first anime that made me cry, like really weep, because I was committed to the show every single week, and then watched this series finale and just wept. And I was like maybe 11 or 12, and just like I've always wanted a brother. I have
Mhm.
3 sisters. I'd always wanted a brother, and so like, and then they were about the same age in the show as I was watching it, and so
Mhm.
there was just like this deep relationship I had formed with the Elric brothers. Um, and so that show really changed my life. But then I mean, like, I grew up watching Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, and like a lot of the American adaptations,
Right,
and
right.
stuff like that. And I'm still a huge fan. I watched a lot of Power Rangers, which isn't a anime, but it is a Japanese originating show that was
Yeah.
then converted into an American show, and I love the story of the Power Rangers and like, look at all these diverse young people coming together to take on the bad guys. I'm like, yeah. So I relate to that. But now I'd say one of the most impactful shows on me this year. I've been watching a lot of Netflix. Netflix has been adopting a lot of animes, which has been really nice. So I don't have a Crunchyroll subscription like the diehard fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I already have too many subscriptions.
Mhm.
But this year I finished. I watched all of Legend of Voltron, Legendary Defender. Great, fantastic show. And She-Ra. These are both like DreamWorks animes that are more American. So like
Yeah.
some more diehard Japanese are like, those aren't, and I'm like, I get it, but
Mhm.
these are shows that like their overarching concept is this diverse group of young people from all these different walks of life come together to literally save all of existence.
Mhm.
That is a powerful message. Avatar: Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. Again, another examples of look at what happens when your forces combined. You have the power of friendship. You love each other. You have a passionate commitment to something that no matter what, young people, you can literally save the planet. You can literally save
Mhm.
all of existence. And that message has just resonated with me since I was young, and even more so this year. And is that type of um, example just continues to motivate me and be like, yep, I am a paladin. Yes, I am the Avatar. Yes, I am, She-Ra. Like, yes, I am. Like, I want to be the hero. I see myself there. But the hero never does it alone. The
Mhm.
hero never does it alone. And so when the president says things like, I alone can fix it, you're like, bro, that's just never true. Like, have you watched any
Mhm.
movie ever? Like,
Mhm.
even the hero who ends up like saving the day by themselves got there because someone else helped them. There was no way that they got there by themselves. So, long story short, Full Metal Alchemist, I think Brotherhood definitely takes the place because it's better as a story. But Full Metal Alchemist is my favorite anime, and then since then I've really fallen into just loving animated anime and cartoons as a source of influence and inspiration in my work.
Okay. Yeah, that's like really cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and suggest an anime to you. It's Hunter x Hunter. I believe it's on Netflix at the moment.
Yes, I've heard tons, and Hunter x Hunter was in. I used to get copies of Shonen Jump when I was a kid. I used to read manga a lot
Mm.
too. So Hunter x Hunter was in there. I mean, I've watched One Piece, and I'm started Castlevania, um, based off of the game and stuff. And so yeah, Hunter x Hunter, I'll definitely check out.
Yeah, it's about yeah, the main character, he has a bunch of friends and they of course go off and save the world. Like like a typical Shonen Jump. And you said you saw the manga, so yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure you
yeah.
know the general story.
Perfect. Yeah, and like Shaman King, I was a really huge fan. All the shonen series is. I read a ton of mangas growing up, like everything from like Fruits Basket to Get Backers to GTO. Like
Mhm.
my uncle is 7 years older than me, and so he's like my big brother, and he would like he had a job, so he would like he'd get his paycheck and like go to Suncoast and buy like a bunch of new mangas for the month, and then I would just go over and read all of them, and just that sense of wonderment. I never want to lose that, and I think this anime and manga and just like that creative output is something that I find respite in after long days of doing like lots of brain work and trying to like solve all the world's problems. I can just kind of sink back into these other worlds and see how they fix it, how they address it.
Okay, I guess getting back to the whole like mayoral portion, what else in Omaha do you think needs work? I know right now a big issue all over the place is the what are we gonna do with small businesses? Like a lot of them are like struggling right now, and like I have a few friends with like small businesses out in Omaha, and I was like
Mm-hmm.
wondering like what can we do or what would you do for them?
Mm. That I'm so glad you bring that up. Yeah, small businesses are the backbone of any community. And yeah, many of my friends own coffee shops, or many of the coffee shops that I go to are now my friends. um, and I mean, how I patronize those places is because they are within a accessible distance for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can bike there, I can take the bus. Sometimes I walk, but mostly bike. Um, and the fact that those places are as accessible and that there's a small network of people, of regulars and people who go there and support it, that is the kind of mentality we need to take with our small businesses. Have you heard of the 15-minute city?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
So it's a term used in urban planning and design that kind of outlines a people's space and parameter that kind of like within 15 minutes. So I can
Mm,
go to the supermarket within 15 minutes. I can go to the pharmacy within 15 minutes. I can go to the park within 15 minutes. And this is like walking, biking. This isn't driving because Omaha is 15 minutes old. But this
yeah.
is by your personal mobility, you can get to and from another place within a 15 minutes of where you're living. If we take that approach and localize it, and identify nodes in Omaha that actually where the 15-minute city is kind of coming to fruition, it's very few and far in between, and most of them are in the eastern part of Omaha. And so what you end up having is like you have more small businesses kind of thriving on this side of town because they're accessible,
Hmm.
because they're in a denser urban area. Whereas when you get to suburban communities where it's much more suburban residential concentrated, and then there's small businesses far, they are still getting support and people still drive, et cetera, et cetera. But it makes it more challenging because um, there's so much more infrastructure involved. So if you can say, um, like when we're doing permitting and for new construction, or we are or permits for new businesses to occupy spaces, let's change some of our codes so that maybe an old house that's in a suburb could be turned into a coffee shop or into a bookstore or into a service. Like, not it rarely do you see in other communities, especially more urban communities, where there's just residential for miles. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, rarely do you ever see just that. And so if we can change some of our mindset, be like, okay, well, like, here's this subdivision. There's not a single pharmacy in the subdivision. Can we make one of these houses one?
Hmm.
Can someone sell their backyard that could house a building on it to become the pharmacy for the neighborhood? Like,
Right,
because
right.
that way, that what you make the focus is small business. What you make the focus is locally owned, meeting the local needs of that community where it's at, versus like building a Walgreens, just up the street, where I'm like, okay, well, if I can't, if I'm using this as a literal example because I live on a hill, the bottom of a hill, on like the flattest, lowest part of the city, and then our closest Walgreens up on a hill.
Hmm.
If you're an elder who has a difficult time walking and navigating, there's snow on the sidewalks because the sidewalks didn't get shoveled or something, and you need to go to the pharmacy and you don't have a car, you can't go. Someone has to
Hmm.
go for you. It's not your choice whether you want to go get the things that you need. It's
Right.
whether somebody else can. So with the 15-minute city, it works to put people's needs where they are at, and then that works with the local business owner, and that helps spur entrepreneurship, um, instead of just turning everything over to a Target.
Hmm. Is there anywhere in Omaha or anywhere, I guess, like in the world where it's like the model 15-minute city or whatnot?
Oh, for sure. Actually, major cities all over the world are really are taking this to heart. Paris is actually is a city that's been doing a lot of really aggressive work in the last just 5 years, reducing the amount of car traffic in their city, turning roads into walkable spaces, converting old old warehouse districts into markets, and repurposing things. Yes, these are older cities that have a much more European style density to their advantage, but um, it's this massive sprawling city that the car infiltrated in during the 60s and 70s, and that now they're saying no, this is infringing upon our quality of life. We have high asthma rates, we have higher obesity rates, we have high levels of debt, we have too many vehicle deaths, because we continue to operate our society around the car rather than around the person in the place. Copenhagen, of course, is a fantastic example of a community that is based on bicycles and walkability and accessibility. And though these cities are much more concentrated than a place like Omaha, Omaha has a ton of opportunity as far as land and wide open infrastructure to directly address these density issues sustainably and forward thinking. I'm looking out my window right now and I see just like lots upon lots, because these are houses that were torn down in the 60s and 70s and haven't been redeveloped since. So I'm like, this is the opportunity to start thinking, how can we do intermingling commercial and residential housing? How do we start providing like recreational educational spaces and facilities within people's neighborhoods, rather than it's a far thing that you have to drive 20 minutes to get to? And when you start doing that and then working on your public infrastructure as far as transportation, suddenly you have a community that's vibrant, that's unique, and that everywhere you go there's something that you can do there because it was designed to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess I have a question. So I liked your example of like say like, oh, there's no pharmacy within like 15 miles. Let's build one somewhere. What would you say to the people that say like, oh, if a pharmacy is really necessary, like capitalism will dictate that some business will eventually move in. How do you reconcile that thought with what you're trying to push?
1 second, can I pause for a second? I'm getting
Yeah, that's fine.
call. Okay.
Hey guys, just a quick break. I wanted to talk about our sponsor of this podcast, Anchor. Anchor is a free all-in-one podcasting suite accessible on any computer or mobile device. I've been getting a lot of questions, honestly, about like, how did I start my podcast? And my journey started with me trying to find a software which allowed me to do everything I needed, such as recording and editing. And honestly, like Anchor like went above and beyond that. It definitely makes it easy for you to get published on various popular apps such as Spotify and Apple and Google podcasts. And it also helps you get monetized by setting you up with sponsors as your channel or your podcast begins to grow. Even if you're not like a podcast creator, you should definitely download this app, as you can find your favorite podcast and listen to it there, or you can explore and find new podcasts like these. So yeah, download the free Anchor app today from the Google Play Store or the App Store, or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I guess to repeat the question, yeah, how would you, in a sense, like reconcile those two different like worldviews?
Yes, I'm so glad you bring that up, because capitalism is something we're gonna have to talk a lot about, and we need to be talking about very deliberately, and what it has produced and what it has made accessible, and the benefits that we have been afforded, but how that has come to a cost and a detriment to many other people, place, and planet. So, capitalism is designed specifically to extract as much profit as possible from people, place, and planet. And I say these things next to each other very consistently and often, because they're wholly related, and it's where most of our resources come from. All of our energy, all of our materials come from people, place, and planet. And capitalism is designed specifically to extract as much profit from it, to feed those who own the name, but it at no point was it like, oh, we want to just do good just to do good because that's what good's supposed to be. And are there some people who are engaged in the capitalist system who have a B Corp and are doing these types of things? Yes, but inherently so. This system in its entirety was not designed to be helpful for every single person. It was meant to be helpful for maybe the consumer and the person who owns it. So waiting for, your question, you asked about the pharmacy. I'm going to use an example of a grocery store.
Okay.
In North Omaha, because of the limited density and as well as people's low incomes, we have been overlooked for a site for a supermarket for years. That doesn't mean we don't need food. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so with the fact that, people have reached out to Walmart, they've reached out to Fresh Time, they've reached out to Hy-Vee, they've reached out to all these big names and corporations, but they look at our neighborhood and they do not see the wealthy individual who can afford organic produce and products and who can do all these other things that a market needs in order to turn their profit. And so they don't see us as valuable, even though we need fresh, local, organic produce that's going to make our lives better, because that's how we are able to take on our health, build our wealth, and then become more valuable people in society. And so instead of waiting for a corporation to decide that their bottom line is good enough for us to eat, we ought to form cooperative markets that work with local producers who are like, hey, this is our guy. He raises goats and he produces goat milk and goat cheese. This is, this is Kate. She produces all the herbs. Like, when we create that kind of cooperative network, we no longer have to wait for somebody else to decide when we get fed or when we get taken care of. And I know that sounds attractive to rugged individualists who are like, hey, do for yourself. Okay, well, let's do that, because Amazon's not worried about me. Amazon's not worried about any of us. Amazon's worried about how can we make Jeff Bezos a quintillionaire? He's a quintillionaire, whatever, 5 billion now. Whatever, it's excessive. He didn't do $5 billion of work. Billions of people did. You know what I mean? Like, we have to really start to challenge that and like, oh, well, the rich are somehow these benevolent gods who decide to, give unto us their fortunes, when like we're the ones, people, place, and planet created your fortune. If none of us existed, Amazon wouldn't exist. If none of us existed, you wouldn't have those things. So to bring it back to that local approach, I think small businesses, limited cooperative associations, and these types of cooperative economic approaches can help us really take on our issues where they are and come up with local solutions for our own problems, rather than trying to find a one-size-fits-all approach from a supermarket or a corporation. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be inspired by other places. I think one of the biggest strong suits of like a cooperative approach is the networking that it affords you all over the country, all over the planet. There's a cooperative market in Lincoln, for example. So I've been reaching out to the people who go to that co-op and the director there to talk to them about how do we do something like that here in Omaha? What are the steps that it took? Who do you need to lead this? How do we support that? And I want to try to get as much information so that as mayor, I can be like, hey, what do you need? I want to be able to go to that community and say, what do you need? How do we help you do that? Let's make that happen. And some people are like, oh, it's always going to be money. Sometimes, but it's not always. Actually, it might just be information.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be like, hey, here's who you need to talk to. And I think it's the role of the mayor and city council and city hall to broker and facilitate those relationships to help people get their needs met. It's not always, giving millions of dollars. It could literally just be like, here's who you need to talk to. Because I found that the position that I'm in through school and now as a journalist, as a founder of a nonprofit news organization that, started with $25,000 and now we're prepared to be at a $250,000 budget next year. That didn't happen just because I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It happened because I talked to the people. I was passionate about something, and I built a team that was there by my side to help build this together. That's the kind of collaborative, cooperative work ethic we need. in City Hall and in the world if we wish to survive.
Okay, yeah, that sounds all like everything you've said so far sounds like, great and everything, but it seems like, you're kind of like an outsider in like, today's current like political system. Um, as an outsider, like how are you gonna, yeah, in a sense, like, force your way in? Like to me, that just seems like an impossible task.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked this question because I think about all the time. Yeah, I am an outsider of the conventional sense, but I'm an insider in that like I've been in all these spaces. I've met these people, I've seen their stuff, I know their documents, I'm familiar with the spaces they operate, and I've been outside with the community seeing how they're directly affected. But I mentioned earlier, I'm a visual performing artist first and foremost. And I know spectacle. I know spectacle, I know communication strategy, I know branding, I know, and I know the internet, I know how TikTok works, I know how to use these modern communication tools in a way that other opponents, that my opponents do not. And by being a young person who can articulate the things that I can in a way that I do, I think is really important. I can sound really fancy and I can also talk mad shit. Like, you know what I mean? So I know my whole life I've been trained in code switching and like how to operate in certain spaces to be amenable to certain people to get what you need. And that's not like hiding who I am. That's just learning how to adapt and be a chameleon in those spaces. Because I recognize there are some people who believe that I should not exist. That like me,
What do you mean by that?
That like me as a brown queer person in Omaha, Nebraska, who's running for mayor and advocating for transparency and communication and sustainability and all these types of things, they may see my existence as a fundamental threat to their own. I have to accept that extreme, that someone like encounters me and they're like, you are a threat to me. Even though I'm not a threat, but I've accepted that fact. So from there, I can begin to think, okay, well, like, what do we connect on? What do we relate on? What are similarities? Someone might, I've met, older white political conservative men who meet me and be like, oh, we have nothing in common. But then at the end of the day, they're like, oh, you actually like care about neighbors. You actually care about like, you want society to be, yes, like I'm not, like, does everyone need to be me? No, that's not the point. But I do want to see everyone have their basic needs met. Like, why is that so radical? They call it socialism and that we're some type of like, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, bro, I'm literally just trying to see people fed. And not just like fast food, real food that they grew themselves. So what I've been finding is that because of my personal characteristics and my charisma and my ability to like talk in different languages and use and make things digestible for people, and that's what I've had to do in journalism, is take a bunch of ideas and synthesize them and make them accessible. That's how I see myself been pushing into this political space. Also, I'm a burlesque performer, so like there's pictures of me in like lingerie and dancing in heels and performing in wigs, and there's also pictures of like I'm not ashamed of the multidimensional nature of my being, whereas many traditional political candidates really try to shape themselves to be the perfect candidate by erasing their personhood.
Yeah, I feel like, and I also feel like a lot of the time, people run solely based off of like, identity or like what they identify as. But I like that, you actually have like, substance and like some policy behind everything you're saying as well. Like, that's refreshing.
It's a combination. You've got to blend them all together. And I feel like with this campaign, with this just time that we're in right now, I no longer want to divorce myself of my humanity in order to appease a system that actively works to undermine my humanity. And what we have seen historically are many candidates, representatives forego their realness as a person in order to afford them power When really I feel like that makes you the most powerless person, when your own identity is erased because you chose to give it away so someone could, give you millions or something. And I will never do that. Working in a nonprofit space is already challenging, where, you have wealthy donors who want to, oh, that's a great thing, I support it. But I'm like, do you really? Because you get all of your money from capitalism, correct? and the exploitation of my community, right? But I'm excited to say those things in public. I'm excited to talk to people about them, and I'm not here to blame. I could go around and blame and shame. I don't think there's any benefit in that, but I am going to call out. I am going to bring focus to, and then do something about it. I'm not here to just talk about the doom and gloom of the world and be like, well, time to go get some more Starbucks. No, it's with the cup and everything. No, let us work together creatively, because all of us, if you ask anybody, even the wealthiest individual who might be, a money hungry, real estate tyrant or something, just wants to be happy. They just want purpose. They want to be fulfilled. They want to feel like they're making a difference. They want to feel important. Everyone wants those things. And for so long, we've been convinced that money and titles and positions are the things that make you those things. Right. And I would love to get in a position to say, actually, it doesn't. Oh, I'm mayor. Guess what? Not different. Still a person. Yes, I have authority that was afforded to me by the people, but more or less, if I do something that you don't like, you can hold me accountable for it and ought to. And I'm not going to now just neglect you and harm you because I don't care what you have to say. So back to your original question of how you push in, be an artist, be honest, talk to people, and then run a modern campaign that people haven't seen before, using technology, using symbols, using all these communication and public relations strategies I learned in school. And, I'm starting my TikTok this weekend. So I'm going to be doing I'm a dancer, so I'll be doing dance challenges, but I'll also be doing things like, what is a mayor 101, and just doing 1-minute videos about what does a mayor do? What is Omaha? History of Omaha. I'm a huge Omaha history nerd.
Okay, can you give us a sneak peek? What is a mayor 101?
what is it? Well, yeah, what is a mayor 101? So, cities all across the country have different mayor systems. There's strong mayor systems. There are city managers, and there's councils. We have a strong mayor system in Omaha. So that means that the mayor of Omaha is essentially the president of the city and the lead executor, and that she has the ability to submit ordinances and to appoint people to numerous boards and negotiate the budget for all city services and contracts. Yeah, I'll have it more jazzy with cool things that go around and links. So just there it is. What is a mayor? The president of the city, if you want to say that term, because that's something people relate to. And this person has and being a strong mayor has massive impact on everything that happens here. And so when you start breaking those down, I can go into sections about police. I can go into sections about development. I can go into sections about food and transportation. I've asked questions of I serve on the mayor's one of the mayor's advisory boards, and have direct conversations with her. And I've asked her questions and things, and I'm just there's too much that you don't know. And that's fine. Your experiences are your own. She's 66, so she brings her own set of experiences coming from an affluent background and things like that. And I have no shame or no shade on her. That's what your life is. But there are too many people now, especially Black and brown people, who are losing their lives and are trying to explain to you that your behavior is complicit in the loss of life. And if you have not registered that in the many years that you've been mayor, and then now are just hiring someone to be your diversity inclusion manager, like every other corporation, basically you're hiring a brown person to come in and tell you how hard it is to be brown in America, when we might just be better off having a brown person being there in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, take the middleman out of it, so to speak,
You
right?
know, just like, I don't want to have to explain to you secondhand what my experiences are so that you might
Hmm.
care about them. How about we just switch them out? So
But how do we get to a point where, in a sense, everybody can, like coexist and like be understanding of each other's like lived experience? Like,
yes.
how do we make this world a better place? Because in my opinion, like I think that's like the biggest problem in the world. Like, how do we reconcile both sides? Because it seems like there's two very different worldviews that just aren't very, in a sense, like compatible with each other. Like,
Mhm.
how do we fix this?
Listening, real listening, and but listening is an active
Mhm.
action. It's not something we do passively, and that's something for too long we've kind of thought and attributed. Active listening that that also then helps us unpack a lot of the feelings and emotions that come with that listening. Sometimes hearing someone's point of view and their perspective and their experience can feel really hard. And it's not supposed to be about you, it's supposed to be about them, but because of what they're saying and how they're saying it, and there are things in there that you relate to, so you may feel like that you're being personally attacked, or that your environment's being attacked, etc. That when someone says something, it's typically not about you. It's
Mhm.
about them and their experience and their perception of their experience. And that is the kind of like thoughtfulness that you need exemplified. Because the only reason I can say these things in the way that I've said them is because I've been shown how. People have walked me through. I've gone through facilitated after facilitated conversation to really start, oh, this is the kind of question you should ask. Here's how. Here's the
Mhm.
space. Like, now let's leave a space. How do you invite people to be vulnerable? Because when you invite people to be vulnerable rather than telling them to be vulnerable, they're much more likely to do so and be honest and forthright. And then that's where the change happens. That's when you start to see the the change of heart. That's when you start to see the change of mind, because the person felt listened to.
Mhm.
They felt like what they had to say was important. Um, and there are so many people just in Omaha who don't feel like they're being listened to. And those are some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. And if we can listen to folks and help address those major vulnerabilities, everyone benefits from that. Everyone benefits. If you house
Mhm.
all of your houseless, everyone benefits from that. If you feed all of your hungry, everyone benefits. If you provide education and healthcare to those who don't have access to either, everyone benefits from that.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
become
definitely.
become a safer community because people have their basic needs met. They no
Mhm.
longer have to engage in illicit behavior to acquire their needs because someone just didn't care enough to help them get what they needed. And so I think there's that compassion, that suffering compassion thing I mentioned earlier, that listening, and that I believe the mayor and city council and these things that government likes to divorce emotions
Mhm.
from things, when emotions are actually like the fundamental like guide just about everything we do.
Yeah.
We might come up with a logical explanation for it, but like more than likely it's rooted in some type of emotion. It made me
Mhm.
feel this way, and so now I'm responding. I want to bring that emotion and heart back to government, and exemplify what it looks like to be a leader of not only of logic and sound decision making, but also someone who listens to their heart and their gut,
Mhm.
and listens to other people's hearts and guts. Should be a surgeon. To um, to then to come with a better solution for moving
Mhm.
forward and working together.
Okay, we talked about a lot of things. Is there any other problems or anything else you wanted to talk about?
I could go on forever, but I'm gonna leave
Oh,
it
please
there.
do. Oh.
We can definitely. Hey, I got Skype back now, so we can definitely reconnect and
Yeah.
keep talking, because this stuff is really important to me. And my thing is, win or lose, the world's gonna change. You know, of course, I'm pushing to win, and I'm pushing to do some impossible things that people might perceive as impossible. But
Right.
what I want to demonstrate and show through this campaign, and especially like come the general election in May, is we can do anything.
Mhm.
And you're never too young, you're never too inexperienced, You're never to something else or not enough. You
Mhm.
are everything you need to be, and you're an expert in your experience. So when you bring that forward, that's where the change comes. Stop waiting for somebody else somewhere to tell us that we are experts in our own experience.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's what I'm gonna end with that.
Okay. Was there anything you wanted to plug? Maybe like your social media.
Oh,
How
yes,
do
of
we like,
course. Yeah,
I
so
guess like
you
find out
can
more?
find out about me. My name's Dawaune. It's spelled Dawaune, and you can
Mhm.
find me at Dawaune.one. So Dawaune.one. And that's where my tap bio is. That's where all my I have platform things on there. You can find me on social media, at Dawaune.one on Instagram, and at Dawaune_1 on Twitter. So yeah, one stands for Omaha, Nebraska, and it's a mnemonic device for you Dawaune to help people remember my name.
That's a good one. All right. So everybody, go ahead and give them a follow if you're interested. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Of course, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.